are.
Okay, we
Okay,
are
here we
live.
are. Hello, my name is Lori Bickel, and I am a spiritual mentor, a spiritual and transformational mentor, and podcaster. And I'm here with Wendy Gordon, a former pastor who is now a mental and spiritual health group leader, speaker, and coach. And in support of International Women's Day Siren Songs, we're here live, voicing our experience and sharing the wisdom we gained from letting go of old identities and traditional spiritual beliefs. It's been quite a journey for both of us, and it goes much deeper than just spiritual beliefs. And we are both very passionate about supporting others during this confusing transition. There is a lot of uncertainty, fear, and grief when you start shedding layers of conditioning, and the process really never ends. It just keeps going deeper, and it's both good and bad. Don't you agree, Wendy?
100%. Um, it would be nice if our transformation journeys were these linear, uphill climbs, and then you reach the mountaintop peak experience, and life is wonderful from then on, and you never have any more doubts or confusion. But it doesn't work that way, and especially at the beginning of the journey, there is so much um, fear and confusion and pain and grief and loss, because you can't stay where you were, and that your old beliefs aren't working, or your old identity was either you had to give it up, or it was taken away from you without
Mhm.
your choice. But either way, you have to adapt. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm definitely not going back there. It's not an option, even if I wanted to. But where am I going? Where do I want to go? And how the hell do I get there?
Right. And it's such a slow thing. Like for me, I grew up Catholic and then I became a non denominational Christian when I was around 40. I'm in my mid 50s now. And then about 50, like things just started to shift. And it wasn't anything that I like. I mean, I had just gone through a divorce, but it's so the awareness. Was yours like subtle like that? And then all of a sudden you start questioning these beliefs and navigating what I knew my whole life, what I believed my whole life. It was so scary. And that's why at the beginning I had said, you and I are both really passionate about this because it's a very lonely time. It's confusing. You don't understand what's going on. And there's so many teachers now that speak it really, really well. And especially many on Substack. I see Jim Palmer has joined, and he's a great resource for understanding it. I love how he always explains it. And so it's just really confusing. And it's just it's very subtle and it's so unique to everybody.
Yes, it's very unique, and yet at the same time, there's so much common underlying um, negative beliefs about ourselves or other people, and fear of letting loved ones know that our beliefs have changed, if they're the ones who taught us those beliefs and still believe them. And so I'm a former pastor, and um, so I had countless people come and talk to me when horrible things happened in their lives, and they couldn't make sense of, okay, well, if God has this grand plan, why did this horrible thing happen to this wonderful person that I loved? Or how can this God of love, and Jesus, who taught everyone to love one another, even their enemies, then how come some Christians are being so hateful to me? um or how could, like, that loving God say, okay, unless you believe and do these exact things, I'm gonna punish you for all eternity? There're just so many interrelated issues. And then there's the whole shame thing, and women being taught that they must submit to men, and it just goes on and on. So for me, a lot of that I questioned from the beginning. Otherwise, I never could have become a female pastor.
Right.
But at the same time, it was still very sudden and disorienting and painful when my career as a pastor ended. It basically My beliefs, both political and spiritual, were too inclusive
Mhm.
for even some people in my progressive denomination to be okay with. Um, and so I was forced into this transition journey, if you will. Um, and my beliefs have continued to evolve and broaden, and I'm so grateful for the wisdom of people from other faith traditions and
Mhm.
atheists and what, of all different beliefs, that have kind of opened my eyes to things that, there was some emphasis on, like it's not okay to explore those things are bad, and our way
Right.
is right.
Right. Like the church I was with, somebody had like reached out to ask them if they would like they could have a yoga class because it was a pretty good size multi-campus church, and they said no because it had traditions from the Eastern religions. And I just went stock and barrel with that. Like I didn't even like if I didn't even like expand from that at all. I just kind of believed it, and that the conditioning I had for so long from the teachings. And so that's the hardest part when you, I think, is when you start to like use your own mind and start to go, oh wait, this doesn't make sense. I don't know why this is going on, why this is happening, and why am I believing this? And then you allow yourself to kind of start to transcend some of those old narratives. And it's confusing because then when you go, I can't even imagine being a pastor. Like I cannot even imagine being a pastor trying to deconstruct from all of this and change, have those evolving spiritual beliefs, because I was very active in my church, and I had to, and thank goodness because the pandemic happened when my transition was happening. And so I kind of like it was easy to pull out of it because there was no church wasn't going on. But then I deconstructed during the pandemic, and so when I didn't go back, there was such a loss of community and who I like identified with, like being a good Christian woman and doing all of that stuff. I mean, going to Bible studies, I loved it all. And so, and then then I went through this whole phase of anger. I don't know if you did. And for a while, I kind of was in that, but then I realized that I didn't want to stay there because I feel a lot of people can get stuck in anger in that situation. And then I tried to find different ways to evolve from it.
Yeah, very much. I was very angry when I first was forced out of my then current role as pastor of a congregation, and there were just so many interrelated traumas, and it was cathartic for me to write articles, political and theological articles, saying like all of this hate that's being preached and acted out. Here's exactly how it directly contradicts everything Jesus taught and did, and know the Bible well enough to counter any of those claims. Um, and ironically, that there's a saying that seminary is where you go to have your answers questioned,
Mm,
and there's a lot of truth to that. And so there's this huge disconnect between what pastors, at least in my denomination, believe, and what people in the pews believe. And so
mhm,
my denomination is the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and it's very progressive. And we have openly LGBTQ bishops and pastors, and have for decades, and same we indigenous pastors, and all these like official statements, repudiating Martin Luther's anti-Semitic remarks, and affirming LGBTQ people, and condemning white supremacy, and on and on and on. And yet, the individual members are free to believe whatever they want to believe. Um, and so there's this huge disconnect, and it's created a lot of conflict. And I was one victim of that conflict. And then
mhm,
ultimately, as I interviewed with other churches, I realized, no, I just can't pretend this is okay, and just, like, okay, we'll just agree to disagree. No, this is wrong, period. It's, whatever your religious beliefs are, it's wrong to hate other people, to threaten them, intimidate them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I had to, you know, and I still do have to wrestle with, okay, not hating the haters in return, and staying in
mhm,
that angry place
mhm,
that you mentioned, and moving beyond, what am I against, to, okay, what am I for? And how can I bring hope and healing and more love into the world, instead of just counter hate with more hate. And
right. That's so courageous to stand up the way you did. And I know a lot of former pastors go through this they see it from a different lens too, especially if their moral compass is going, this isn't right, right? Like this isn't right. And because I was able to kind of just like slide out. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? I did have some friends that weren't part of it, but a huge part of my community was my church, and I absolutely loved my church. So it definitely, and it's such a process to I mean, I'm 5+ years in now. And how long are you in? Because it takes a long time. And every year I come to another level of understanding of like what I was conditioned to believe or that I just don't believe it anymore. And just trying to come to terms with what do I believe now? And now I've kind of got to the thing. I was like, I don't know what I believe. I just kind of go with it. And a lot of your stuff is kind of on the intellectual level. I feel a lot of it emotionally and like, because I'm very sensitive and I'm just like, that just doesn't seem right. And sometimes I can't counteract with the intellectual. It's just like, no, that's not right. And so I feel like there's people on all sides. Like you're here able to write all these articles with all this information to back up your claim. But I kind of more feel it on a more like feeling level.
Oh, I very much feel it at that emotional level too, and I had to have a little bit of distant. Like my first articles were basically just angry rants, and I've kind of evolved since then, or tried to anyway. I still get triggered sometimes, but yeah, it is a deep emotional thing. I think part of the difference for me was that I didn't have as many religious beliefs to deconstruct from, because I had deconstructed from them decades ago, like while
Mhm.
as part of even becoming a pastor, much less, while I
Mhm.
was a pastor. So it wasn't that my own spiritual beliefs changed that much. They have changed some because they're even broader now. Like I didn't when as a pastor, I never thought about, as we baptize babies, we welcome them as children of God, and now I'm like, well, hello, they were always children of God, and
Right.
like every other kid, whether they're ever baptized or not, and things like that I just hadn't thought about. But at the emotional gut level, the pain for me was losing the community,
Yeah.
and my abrupt forced departure was at the height of COVID. So the
Hmm.
majority of my church members were not at church. The council had voted to resume services, and this was July of 2020. So there were no vaccines yet. Our windows didn't open. It was just crazy. And so, like, the majority of members knew that was not safe, and they're older, and that they chose not to come.
Hmm.
But so that meant my husband and I didn't get to say goodbye to them at all. And it
Hmm.
was just like, okay, all of a sudden we're leaving. And, everyone, ourselves included, was like, why? How did this happen? Still stunned, still numb from it all. Um, so that was my emotional pain. And it was not just that we, couldn't obviously attend that church anymore since we weren't the pastors. We lived in church owned housing, so we had to move out,
Oh
and
my
we had to do
gosh,
that
that's a
with no
lot.
income, and
Yeah.
we had to find new jobs and move to another city, and plus, of course, all the emotional trauma, because these are people we considered friends and thought we were close to, that were on this ruling body that voted in our absence that, okay, we're going to just tell them we want them gone in 2 weeks, and we had never talked about it before that. So yeah.
Yeah, you
um
have a lot different. You have anger on a different level. It's more like it is almost personal. I mean, in the sense on
yeah,
some
it's
of
very
that,
personal. Yeah.
because my anger was coming from like I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school, and then I thought when I went over to Christianity, I was like, oh my gosh, it's the cool music and everybody's so open. And little did I know, I know for a fact, like thinking back on my life, that I stayed in my second divorce longer than I should have because I didn't want to be divorced twice and I wanted to be the good Proverbs 31 Christian woman and all of those type of things. And so it definitely had an effect on me. And that's the kind of stuff that I still deal with, right? I mean, I still deal with some of the conditioning that I had. And that kind of brings us to what the purpose of the reason we decided to do this live today. We were going to do it next week, but we did it to be in support of the International Women's Day. And so for us, even though there is beliefs around the spirituality, it's also as women. And a part of that is breaking down, even though I know a lot of men go through this too. And I think there's more men that don't really talk about what they're going through with it as much as women because maybe they're not allowed or don't feel comfortable to. But did
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, as women, so much of the patriarchy and hierarchy and submission and be a good girl, like you were saying.
Mhm.
You can't um, enjoy sex. Sex is bad. Sex is wrong until you're married. And then it's, at least what I was taught religiously from my conservative father, was that women never really enjoy sex. They just submit to it once they're married to satisfy their husbands and because they want to have kids. Um, and so there are just so many ways that women are shamed.
Yeah.
And I also experienced it, seeing women who pastors abuse sexually get they're the woman is the victim, but she is blamed for somehow seducing that pastor,
Mhm.
or she's just not believed and everyone defends the pastor. There
Yeah.
are just so many horrible things, and then all the cover-ups that are coming to light
Oh, they've been coming
now.
out for a while, especially in some
Yeah,
of these big
right. But
churches. Yeah.
more and more all the time. And that, when there was the Me Too movement, then there was the Church Too movement, and it's just appalling how the intersection of a theology that teaches a male God, and that men were created to rule over women, and women's role is to have babies and be the home person who takes care of everything at
Right.
home, while the
Right.
guy is the breadwinner, and all of that. It's all so interrelated with religious teachings.
100%. 100%. So do you think we should maybe go over this first question we were going to discuss from the soars the Siren Songs post? It was like, did you ever let go of an old identity only to be faced? Okay, let me start over. Did you ever let go of an old identity only to be faced with confusion before new parts of you emerged, evolved, or even endangered your view of the world? I could list pretty much everything:
Yes.
being married, being Catholic, being Christian, um, being a good girl, a good daughter, a rule follower. I mean, I have been going through it the last year, and one of the things I really realized recently, and not to have any political piece of this, but I am not being married and being single and trying to create my own income. Like, I'm not in any kind of protected class right now. Like, I'm not protected at all. I'm all out by myself, and I'm feeling very vulnerable in today's way of doing it. And so, I left unhealthy relationships instead of staying someplace where I could be comfortable. So, financially, in a
Hmm.
sense. So I've completely emerged in a new person because I've had to recreate myself being here on live, doing this with you on Substack. I never in a million years thought you told me this in like last August I'd be doing this. I'd say you were crazy. So, because a lot of has changed and happened to me, and I have to, and it has been my like passion, and I know I'm supposed to work in this field and helping people transition through their transformational seasons, because I've experienced a lot, as I'm sure you have too, Wendy.
Yeah, that, and same thing. I mean, I very much see the work I'm doing now as a mental and spiritual health coach and support group leader as my calling, at least as much as being a minister used to be my calling. I'm just able to reach a lot more people now, and I don't have to toe the party line, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and there, I just don't feel any need to convince anyone that this is the right belief system or the right spiritual practices. I'm all about helping people find their own answers, and actually giving them the opposite message, because there so many of them are being told by their faith communities, their family members, whoever, that it's not okay to have spiritual doubts and questions. You can't, this says this right here in the Bible, you must believe this, and to even question it, God's going to get mad at you and punish you, kind of thing. And I mean, there's so many ways that's wrong, and even the Bible itself has multiple examples proving that's wrong. But the point is that, yeah, I just think it's so important for all of us to have safe spaces to share experiences. I just finished leading a 6 week spiritual support group on Zoom that was totally inclusive, and I made it very clear, it's for atheists, it's LGBTQ affirming, it's, no bigotry will be tolerated, et cetera, et cetera. And it was amazing how, and I limited it to 12 people. And in that 6 weeks, the deeply personal stuff that people
Hmm.
shared, and the fact that at the end of the 6 weeks, when it was supposed to end, they said, "Can we please keep this going and just
Hmm.
meet, once a month? We'll pay more to keep meeting. This is so important to us." And so, yeah, that's why I said I know this is my calling, because there aren't enough safe spaces like that. Our world
Hmm.
is so polarized in every aspect of life now that people are so afraid of being judged and condemned and rejected, excluded, shamed, that they don't feel safe asking questions or sharing experiences because they don't know how the other person's going to react to them.
I agree with that. And having a place to, especially if you were in a spiritual place in a church and that you don't feel comfortable in anymore, like we've said numerous times, is the community. You have a loss of community. And that's probably the biggest thing that I have that I missed is that I don't have, like, I loved, as I think I said earlier, Bible studies and serving at church. It gave me a purpose to do something on Sunday mornings. It gave me something to do and have a community of like minded people that I wanted to be with. And so that I love, I'm sure people are starving for that type of community of the spiritual connection, because we can have a lot of different connections. What people I feel really are looking for is deeper level personal connections that they have. And that's why I've loved Substack in the short time I've been on here, because people are real and they're, it's not just scrolling through the news feed and just like click click click. It's just really, and like how we reached out and we had a conversation, you reached out, we had a Zoom conversation, we're like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I have with other people, many other people as well on this platform. I never have done that in Instagram or Facebook. So it's been a great thing. And I think that you're having another one coming up, aren't you? Another one of these
Yeah,
are
I am.
starting.
I'm starting another 6 week group that, who and may end up being longer, but that 6 weeks initially, that is going to start on Sunday, May 4th, and it'll run on for 6 Sundays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Central Time, and I'll be putting out more information about it soon. Um, but yeah, each week we have like a specific topic, like spiritual people, like we talk about who our spiritual role models are and why,
Mm,
living or dead, whether we ever actually knew them in real life or not, doesn't matter. And spiritual objects like, tarot cards, photographs, artwork, anything that can be spiritual, and spiritual places and experiences, just all the things that, some of us were taught were like had to be confined to like a religious environment,
mhm.
or were like the wrong kind of spiritual thing.
Right.
I mean, everything is spiritual and can
Yes.
be what deeply meaningful, and there's no one right or wrong way. Something that,
Right.
doesn't work for me may be just what you need, and vice versa.
Mhm. It's so freeing when you start to expand your spiritual evolution.
Yes.
I've become a Reiki master, and explored energy healing, and it's completely changed me. It's completely changed me. And I remember one time I was someplace, and one of my friends from my church, I was talking to a group of people. We were meeting for a glass of wine, and some woman had given me her Reiki card. And I walked up, like, "Oh my gosh, Reiki! That sounds so cool. I want to try it." She's like, "Well, that's from, what did she say? That's evil infused or something from something." And so I was like, "Oh, well, I can't do that." Like, see, I just automatically, like, it's not Christian, so I just put it away. And that's far from what it is. I've learned, and I'm just and I love it. I mean, I've gotten into, like, sound healings are so healing for me, because it help I have a lot of, the traumas we have in our life, and it helps, regulate our systems, and it opens us up to, like, being here. I mean, all of that energy healing is the reason, and the energy work I've done is the reason I can sit here and do all of this. So who is one of your favorite spiritual teachers? Since you said that, I would love to hear.
There are so many. One that's like a very ancient one that lived in the 1100s, that I actually have this quote hanging on my wall from. Her name is Hildegard of Bingen, and she was a mystic who had these divine visions that she wrote about. And it was very unusual because she was able to do four different preaching tours all over Germany, and she had the permission from the Pope, and she corresponded with Pope, and she's now officially recognized as a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. And she was preaching to male Roman Catholic priests. I mean, that's just amazing. But anyway, the quote that I have that hangs on my wall says, "Holy Spirit, giving life to all life, moving all creatures, root of all things, washing them clean, wiping out their mistakes, healing their wounds. You are our true life, luminous, wonderful, awakening the heart from its anxious sleep."
Mhm. I love that. I
And
love
I
that.
saw that at an art festival, at the wall hanging that I have, and it just touched me so deeply, and inspired me to find out more about who is this woman, and what's her story. And um,
And so
but then in
she's like
terms,
kind of a Catholic mystic. How did you get up? Usually I know from what I learned once I became a Christian that the Catholic mystics and we live in different silos, right? So,
yeah, interestingly, that is really not as true as some people think, because there's, like, within Roman Catholicism there are silos, if you will. There are
oh
very
yeah,
different belief
yeah.
systems, and so, like, the Franciscans and the Benedictines and other traditions within Roman Catholicism can be very, like, social justice oriented and very progressive. And, like, I
Mhm.
don't, you may remember the whole Nuns on the Bus tour that was a political thing a
I
few years ago.
don't. I
Well,
don't.
anyway, there's actually a really long, proud tradition of social activism and justice work within Roman Catholicism. But as with our society as a whole, there's also the whole backlash of the patriarchy saying this is not okay, and you need to know your place and get in
Mhm.
line and not question, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, and then as far as, like, someone personally in my life who is a spiritual role model, is actually the pastor who inspired me to be a pastor when I was in high school. He and his wife was my high school English teacher, and they became like my second parents. And they're in their 80s now, and we still email each other.
Aw.
And he married my husband and I, and preached at our ordination service. And
Oh wow,
um,
that's really
but
special.
yeah, so I mean, that's how I became a pastor, because I wanted to be like him, because he had a great sense of humor and he was just so loving. And here I am, a teenager. I mean, being a teenager is a hard, confusing time, I think, for everyone in some way or
Mhm.
another. And it definitely was for me. And so, he and his wife were like my lifeline, because my parents'
Wow.
marriage was falling apart and they should have divorced many years before they finally
Wow.
did after I left home. And so they couldn't meet my emotional needs. And plus, like I said, with my dad, he's very conservative religiously, so he was all about, basically me making sure that I kept my pants zipped, and understanding how wrong it was to have sexual desires as a woman. And um, so yeah,
Yeah.
so many spiritual role models and heroes that are all women and men
Mhm.
who have not followed traditional gender norms and have not been afraid to stand up for what they believe is right, even if
Mhm.
they stand alone and face negative consequences for doing it.
Right.
Um, and then the second question of the distortion that freed myself from, um, was that I needed external validation or approval to feel good about myself, to know
Yeah.
that I was okay.
I would say that is I have mine like, what will people think? I can't do this, right? One of the biggest I moved to Florida from where I'm from, St. Louis, a couple years ago, and I just left. I'm like, I'm single. I can, my friends are all married. They all have stuff going on. I work from home. I want to be warmer in the winter. And I want to have warmer weather, or the sun at least, because where I live isn't that warm. I'm in northern Florida. But it was more, and that's one of the things I have completely freed myself from. When you totally leave, and it's taken me a while, because now that I've been gone for so long, I used to when I would make a choice, like doing stuff like this, I might think of what people would think of me. And now I don't think anything of it. I'm like, I really am free to be whoever I want to be. And I think the only thing that's holding me in Florida is my dog, because I'm like, I would just go to Europe for a while or go do this and try different things. And so that might be my future. But I would think another thing for me is being, like how I mentioned before, being protected. I think being married and that I had to find security from a man to take care of me. And even though I did do, I had jobs here, always in and out of it, staying at being home, stay at home mom, but I always kind of held on to that security of like, I can't do it on my own. And that's been something that I'm like completely walking into a whole nother level of being able to be my true self, my authentic self that I've always been, that has just been suppressed from just the generation that I've been brought up in, being a Generation X woman, and the conditioning in my family. My mom and dad have been married almost 60 years, and just being raised Catholic and conservative, and now I'm kind of like, I don't align with that stuff anymore. I just, so much of it, I think for so many years I just went along with it, and I don't do that anymore. And that has been the most freeing thing of like just saying I don't have to do this. And I think for years, Wendy, you probably feel this with some of the stuff you're saying. I agree with. Probably I was trying to push out of it, and hence why I had these divorces. Like, I'm not staying here, and I just couldn't finally have found my, who I'm really living on my authentic self now for the first time ever.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not sure if it's for the first time ever, but I'm I don't have kind of the guardrails or the constraints that I used to as a pastor. Like I said,
Mhm.
I no longer have to like be an official representative of a denomination and preach and teach in accordance with specific things. I can say whatever what I think, and I don't have to worry about, oh, how are my church members going to respond to this? What if they get mad and leave, or get me fired or whatever? Like none of that matters now. I'm self-employed, and so I decide, what I'm going to say and do, how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, with whom, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I love about Substack is how many other women there are, especially middle-aged and older women like
Yes.
us, who have come to that realization after years of conditioning and people pleasing and wanting to fit in, and be the good girls. We're finally free to, like, no, I'm going to do what I feel like doing, and no one else is going to convince me or coerce me into silencing my voice or pretending to agree with something I don't.
The interesting thing is when my son, who is 24, is also going through the pushing away of conditioning. And I'm so excited that, he left the town we lived in, that, everybody stays where I'm from. I'm from St. Louis. You stay, go out and you stay in these towns. And he moved to Manhattan, and he's pushing through, and he's doing it at 24. And it just is like, I'm watching it. Like, we're almost on the same path, but he's doing it so much younger than me. And so when I say it's not just, it is women. And that's the whole point of today, but there's so many men that are also, and young men going, I don't want to live this way. I want to do it a different way. And it just makes me really excited to watch this and to go in the sense where you're talking about other women. I was reading something this today about a woman who posted something on for the IW, International Women's Day. And she was talking about the conditioning and how, like, the part when you said everybody's talking about it, because we need each other, because we
Hmm.
need the support of each other to walk through, to be braver, to have our message. And when we're all saying, sometimes at first I was like, we're all saying the same thing, but we're really not, because we are, but everybody's gonna resonate with different people, and we need to do it together. And that's the whole point of why there's an International Women's Day for us, right? So we can hold hands, interlock our arms, and go together to break through these things so we can all live authentically. Everybody, not just women, men too.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, and non-binary people,
Yes.
people of all sexual orientations, gender identities,
Yes.
ethnicities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just about women reclaiming our voices and our power. It's
Well
about
said.
everyone, and even the men who are the ones abusing their power to harm others and trying to be the dominators. Um, they may not comprehend it, but they are being harmed just as much by that as the people they are harming, just in different ways and
Yeah,
deeper levels. I loved the Barbie movie. I wasn't going to go see it because I had this stereotypical image of, Barbie
I did
being
too.
the skinny negative stereotype of women. But there are some magnificent messages in it, and it just in such a wonderful creative um, way kind of reversed the usual gender stereotypes and showed how harmful they are to everyone,
Mhm.
and the ultimate liberation for all
Yes,
genders of just being free to express your emotions and to be
yes,
assertive and to be cry and to be angry and everything, the full gamut, and to come together as equals and partners and collaborators instead of competitors.
right.
um,
That's why I love how I love this post that she put out to do these lives and do post, I mean, newsletters. I just love all of that. So one of the other questions we were going to talk about from that post was what needs to die in order to be reborn. And mine, what my the first one I wrote down was my attachment to the predictability of a linear life, like that we even live a linear life. Like I think really just in the last year or so, I'm like, huh, all those things I was told to do, they were all a lie. It was never going to for sure work out that way. And so, just to touch back on what we talked about, you said your favorite author. One of my favorite teachers recently has been Pema Chodron, who wrote When Things Fall Apart. I think I've read that book 7 times in the last year, and I think I only read it because I love the title so much. And she's the one who taught me about uncertainty when I read this book 4 years ago, uncertainty and the impermanence. And that's how I've been able to let go of my attachment to this is the way things should be and in this order, and if I'm a failure if I didn't do it this way, and that's been so freeing to me.
yeah, I agree. And her book Coming to Our Senses is awesome too. I don't know if you've read that one.
I haven't read that.
um I think it's newer, but anyway, I it's funny that you said those things because that's almost exactly what I wrote down for myself for my notes to answer this question. Is that what needed to die for me was the illusion of certainty and
Mhm.
control. That the whole idea of like the American dream, and if you get the right education and get the right jobs and work hard and believe, and you will climb up in the world, and everything will in your life will work out wonderfully, and you just have to believe and do the right things. And there are a lot of people in the world, not just me or any people I know, who are suffering tremendously right now and who are barely surviving. Some are homeless, some are, whatever, who did the right things,
Yep.
or who would have if they could have, but were because of systemic, discrimination
Yep.
and other issues could not, and we're shamed for it. And mental health is the other thing I'm passionate about, and it's the same thing there. There's the stigma, and I'm someone who has been through severe depression, and always kind of saw it as a character flaw or something wrong with me. And the medical model reinforces that, okay, you need this medication and you need to do these things to recover from this illness, versus society as a whole is what's toxic. And that's
Right.
why there's this huge
Right.
increase in
A
mental
hundred
illnesses
percent
now, right?
100%. Yes, there's I mean, we all could. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. Like the homeless people are the mental health and all the homeless. It's just out of control, and it just scares me with all the stuff going on with the mass layoffs right now and the like. It just I'm just really I am really scared. And I also put my illusion was that I have my illusion was that I'll be safe as long as I'm taken care of, right? And so
Yeah.
I just felt like, and I always wonder, like, I guess it was just modeling that I felt like I had to have someone take care of me, like just the modeling of my life, or just what it was taught in just general, like, you are a wife, you be a good wife, you're a mom, you do all the right steps, you'll be taken care of. And it's just really is a different when you kind of wake up to notice that, like, okay, I'm going to be okay no matter what. And just the illusion that I had to have that safety, and I think I prolonged being coming into the person I am supposed to be because of that illusion.
Yeah, that's another, message that's so pervasive in our society is that, everyone should be married or have a romantic partner, at least, be in a
Mhm.
relationship, and that you have to be happy. And there's language like, you complete me, or my other half. And it's like, no, we're all complete on our own. And it's one, I mean, I've been happily married for 30 plus years. I'm so grateful for my wonderful husband. But at the same time, if I, thought, well, I'm only okay as long as he takes care of me, or if he was not wonderful and was abusive or whatever, like some women deal with, and I thought I had to stay with him anyway, then yeah, I mean, that's just another destructive message from society, along with the one that all women are supposed to want to be mothers.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that one completely.
I never had children. My husband and I never did. And I can't, I'm so glad that I'm old enough now that I can't have children for multiple reasons, but mainly because I don't have to deal with people always asking, so when are you going to start a family?
Right,
Um,
right. I didn't have
and
a
there
child
again,
for 5
why
yeah,
is family only defined as having children? That's another
right.
messed up thing from society.
Right, because we can be a community and be a family. I know people who have deep rooted communities and they aren't anywhere close to being, they're not blood at all. They have very close relationships. So,
Exactly.
so
And a lot
yeah,
of times people are either rejected by, or for their own well-being have to
Mhm,
leave behind, um, family, blood family, and create their own families with of
right.
people, kindred spirits who will be supportive. And the other thing that I had to let die was my fear of failure. I
Yeah.
was so much the overachiever. It was part of that getting external validation.
Mhm,
And I was, my mom literally did not allow me to fail. If I like had a paper due it the next day that I hadn't done, she would stay up all night with me and make sure that I did it.
mhm.
And when I was in one class, like I was a straight A student, um, and I was in one class with a teacher that, had her own issues and was pretty arbitrary with her grading when she got mad at students and stuff.
Oh no.
So my mom pulled me out of that class and put me in a different one. I mean, so all the way through, I learned, it is never okay to fail, number one. And number two, failure was like getting a B or a C instead of an A. It wasn't, it was ridiculous. And
Sounds like your mom was a helicopter mom before it was a term.
but again, we can go back to how she was raised and her childhood drama, and
100%.
everything goes back generations. And so that's not to blame her. I mean, in many ways, she's
No.
been a wonderful supportive person in my life too. It's just the whole society as a whole does that too. When we're in school, there's all the gold stars you get and the good grades you get and the certificates and the scholarships, and everything is geared around getting us to compete with each other, number one, and want to be the best versus helping others.
Right.
And just the whole mindset of that, like, there's this scarcity, and we're all have to fight and claw to get what's ours. And if we
Yeah.
get more than other people, then that means we're better than them.
Right. Yeah. So before we talk about our last question, what in your group, like what was, I mean, I know they wanted the community, but what was in your group that you had this last group? What was the biggest thing people were really kind of like needing or wanting or questioning as they were going through their transition from spiritual beliefs?
They most needed to be listened to with respect and not being told why they were wrong. Um,
By deconstructing or leaving their faith. Okay.
yeah, well, and we had people in the group who were not deconstructing, who never were, part of the church, um, but who still didn't feel safe sharing with some of their friends or family members spiritual experiences they had had. That
Mhm.
and the what the majority of members said they most appreciated about the group was that when we talked about spiritual experiences, so many people would start out by saying, I know this is weird, but, or I know you're going to
Mm,
think I'm crazy, but, and then whatever they shared, whether it was, seeing and talking with a deceased person,
mm,
or, I don't know, tarot cards, or whatever kind of practice someone else had shamed them for and said wasn't okay. As soon as they started to talk about it, the rest of us were like, yeah, that's not weird. That's happened to me too. Or that sounds really cool. Tell me more about that. We were curious if it hadn't happened to us and it was different
Hmm.
from our experience versus being judgmental. And
Right.
so that's what people said they most appreciated. That and just being able to talk and be listened to without being interrupted and without getting the sense that the person listening was just listening in order to like counteract what you said and prove you wrong.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right. And I
just
love how
acceptance, basically. Yeah.
because when you are evolving into different things like energy healings or tarot cards or sound healings, it's kind of like you're like, oh, I'm going to a like sound healing thing, or oh, I went to go see a energy. You're kind of like, what do you say, and how much can you um because you don't have anybody to talk to about it except for the
Right.
person you're paying to go see,
Yeah.
and they've been through the journey 5, 10, 20 years before you, and that's great, but you don't have anybody. And I've actually found my people here, right? Like, I'm starting to talk to people, so that is a freeing space, like if you're into other things. And because that's what we miss if you were in church, like we said before, the community and the camaraderie, that, oh, we can study this Bible passage, or we can talk about this book, this Christian book, or didn't you love that new song that just came out by
Yeah.
Hillsong, or whatever. Like, all that stuff is just, you lose all of that. And so I can see, and you want to have the camaraderie to be able to talk with other people and have something in common with them. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was really striking to me how that when several of the members shared that, I can't believe I shared this. I haven't even told my best friend this, or
Uh huh.
my partner or whatever, because again they were just not sure what the
Right.
reaction would be, um, or they had shared it with someone they thought they could trust and that would be supportive, who
Right.
turned on them, or
Yes.
um, so yeah, it all goes back to the epidemic of loneliness in our
Yeah.
society, and the need to feel understood and
Mhm.
truly accepted for who we are, and not have to hide or mute certain things in order to be acceptable to
And
others.
that's not even just like leaving your church, right? Like, it's just, I
Right. That.
changed as right, like as everything. Like, I changed as a woman, right? Like, I've tried all these things, and there's only a few people I've been honest with. Some of my friends that I've been honest and told everything like that I've tried, because other people would think I was weird,
Yeah.
and the way that I was brought up. So Wendy, you had a great little poem. Did you write this poem? Did you
I
say
did write it, and I
for?
have to give credit. I was very surprised by it. Allegra Chapman, who is another Substacker, she has a great Substack, and does some live stuff too. But she has this creative well-being workshops, and I went to one that was last August, and she gave us like writing prompts and like visualizations to do. So she had us visualize different types of fires, and then draw an image, and then write whatever we wanted to in response to that. And so this poem just like totally came to me, and like I was shocked. I was not expecting it, but it's my vision of change, basically the wisdom I would want to share with the world. So um, it says, we gather around the fire, strangers become friends, we laugh and cry together. It is a safe fire, contained, so it will not threaten or endanger others. There is room for everyone. Our differences don't matter. We form a circle that cannot be broken unless we choose to let others into it. It is a time of radical acceptance and honesty. We learn more about ourselves as well as each other. We don't want to extinguish the fire or leave the circle, but we must because there is work to be done. We need to share what we've learned to help others learn, to put differences aside and form a circle of healing around the world, a circle that is more powerful than the hate and violence that destroys lives, one where there is acknowledgement of harm done, forgiveness and reconciliation, and lives are changed, the world transformed into a beautiful and safe environment for all to be cherished, protected, and celebrated. A new creation that never becomes extinct and embraces current and future beings who thrive in it and overcome challenges together.
That's awesome. I love it. I think that's a great vision for change, and this is probably a good thing for us to kind of like sign off with, because that's really beautiful. Did you have anything else you want to add? First of all, thank you. This was so fun. I enjoyed our conversation as always, and especially your wisdom. I love your wisdom from your past being a pastor. It definitely adds some depth to some of my experiences that I've had, and I think it would be a whole nother ballgame if I was a pastor leaving and transitioning through my spirituality.
Yeah, thank you, and it's been wonderful, and I'm so glad that we connected on Substack,
Me too.
and look forward to future conversations, whether they're live like this or just with each other. It's just been so awesome, um, to have these kinds of authentic connections where
Yes.
we're both free to say what we really think and share and find the commonalities beneath our very different upbringings, experiences, etc.
Well,
That's
it's a
the other
safe
thing.
place to be able to say what we're saying, because the other one's just listening. Because and that's the whole point of like what you and I both are as mentors and coaches, is just as a safe place for people who are going through this type of a transition. It's hard to do it alone, and sometimes you don't even need advice. You just need to talk to someone who's in the same boat as
Exactly.
you.
In fact, I would say you really never need advice, even if you
Yeah,
think you do and you want someone to tell you.
true.
That the liberation comes from finding the answers within and
Yes,
realizing that you do have them, and you may not see the whole path clearly, but you can say, okay, I'm going to take this one tiny step that seems right, and if it turns out that it's not and I need to turn around or veer off on a different path, that's totally okay. It's part of life,
right,
instead of I have to have it all figured out and this is the one path that I'm supposed to stay on kind of mentality.
right, right. Well, thanks so much, Wendy, and I'm sure we'll be circling back soon.
Sounds great, and thanks for
Bye.
doing this with me. It's been wonderful, and thanks to
Yes.
those who joined us.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.